How's it going? Welcome to Sunny Sheets. I'm Carson. I'm here to chat about the last book I read. Today, we're chatting about Cold Silver for Souls by fellow booktuber Tori Tekken. The camera angle might be a little different. I'm recording this after the fact, but I forgot to mention that this is my first signed book. She actually signed my copy of Cold Silver for Souls, and she included this like nice little thank you note with a personalized message. So that was super kind and super cool. I just wanted to point that out. It had nothing to do with the content of the book, but that was hype as hell. I've never had a signed book before, so super cool. So this is a fantasy western novel, the first book in the Shade Silver series, about a bounty hunter named Hunter who hunts bounties with their hunting. Okay. It's a story about a bounty hunter named Hunter who is a necromancer. She's kind of a lone wolf type, and she runs around with this big corpse that she reanimated named Rip. And kind of like I said, she basically makes a living off of hunting bounties. So the plot of the book kind of kicks off towards the beginning when she takes this job by this really powerful and really influential Shade Silver Baron named McBride. And when she's going through with this kind of last job, she ends up meeting someone that kind of leads her down this path that opens up emotional wounds for her and sort of perpetuates what happens for the length of the book, basically. This book features really heavy Western setting. So, I mean, it's definitely Western. You've got horses and you've got the prairies and saloons, and it definitely feels very Western, which was cool. And it was a nice change of pace for me. I feel like I've been reading a lot of deserty books, a lot of hot desert arid type of environment. So it was fresh reading someone being kind of in this tundra setting and kind of ice cold, snowy type of climate. Very surface level point, but that was refreshing for me. I'll talk about, spoiler free, kind of the things in the book that I thought were great, and some of the things that didn't quite work for me. I think the main weakness of the book for me personally was the pacing. I'm not someone who needs constant high octane energy, and in fact, I really enjoy when we get to sit with characters and sit within the world that we're in and take our time. And this book definitely does that. And I'll talk about specifically some things related to that in the highlights in the prose section right after this. But I think the pace dragged a little too much for my liking. It wasn't a huge detriment to the story, but there were just moments where I was thinking, I'm ready for something to happen. I'm ready for some action, ready for something to happen. So I just thought, yeah, there were parts of the book I thought were a little too slow for me personally. To talk about a lot of the highlights of this book, which I think greatly outshine that negative, is that you sit with all of these characters and it feels very real. The emotions that you feel from Hunter and from some of the people in her immediate circle are very real, and you definitely, it's kind of a cliche phrase, but I felt like I knew the characters in a way, even though the book is so short. They all feel very fleshed out and realistic. There was never a moment where I was like, a character wouldn't do that. I mean, it felt very realistic. I really enjoyed all of the characters in the story. And related to the characters, the dialogue was great. There was some like really badass, cool, witty, funny dialogue that I thoroughly enjoyed reading. I loved whenever the characters were interacting with one another. And I think maybe that goes back to the pacing problem, is because the dialogue in the moments where stuff was happening was so great. And just the pacing, there just was a little bit too much time in between that happening, because the dialogue and all of that was so good when it was happening. And yeah, I mentioned this already, but really strong Western vibes. You had saloons, you had mining barons, you had horses and prairies, and you had sharpshooters and you slinging iron, and within the dialogue too, you had a lot of Southern slang, and just the way that they talked was just really cool. I really, I don't know, it felt it felt very realistically Western, and it was really cool. And also a Western, but taking place, like specifically Paradise City, and specifically like Silver City and Paradise, being in this northern section with snow, and it's like just south beyond these big icy tundra mountains. It's just a really cool setting. I really enjoyed it. So those are my spoiler-free thoughts on Cold Silver for Souls. Try to keep it kind of brief. The pacing was just a little bit slow in the middle section of the book, but the creative world that was crafted, the moments of dialogue and the moments of conflict, and the dialogue and just the actual kind of action beats and high tension beats, I thought were great. I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm absolutely grabbing book 2 when it comes out. If you're looking for something to read, or at least you're looking for like a fantasy novel to get into a read, I highly check this out. It's not a super long book, super cool, very creative. I'm giving this a 6.5 out of 10. So I think I'm going to change the order in which I do my book chats, because normally what I do is I give you spoiler-free thoughts, and then I immediately jump to spoiler thoughts. And then I say what book I'm reading next, and I do my book excerpt outro. But I don't want I want everyone to hear what book I'm reading next. So I'm going to start doing that right after the spoiler-free thoughts. What I am reading next, what I am already 20-something% of the way through, The Lions of Our Son by Guy Gavriel Kay. If you've seen me comment, or if you've seen my last video, you know how pumped I am to be reading this, and I'll be sharing my thoughts with this probably in like 2 weeks total, maybe less than that, depends on how quickly I get through this. Yeah, Lions of Our Son by Guy Gavriel Kay. That does break up the flow a little bit, but now we're here to talk about plot-specific and spoiler-specific points about the book. So yeah, I mentioned the pacing. It was a little bit slow for my tastes. I think 2 specific points, or it's like 2 specific moments that I felt that was the tiny chapter, like the subplot of whenever Hunter and Johnny are headed to Grand Junction for Hunter to drop off Johnny to her friend Addie to be taken care of. There was this whole little subplot about the Marinescent people and their daughter falling into the river and them being saved and all of that. And I didn't think that added much. I remember reading that and wondering where this was going, or if this was going to add much to the story, and I didn't think that it did. I guess you could at least say that it kind of added a little bit of care towards Hunter's character, how she sort of no hesitation jumps into this dangerous river to save this woman that seemingly doesn't like Hunter. Like the Marinescent people don't, necromancers, they think they find that evil and spooky. And so I guess maybe that was the point, just to show Hunter's character of being so like willing to just jump in immediately to save some woman from a people who don't like her. But it wasn't that, I wasn't too interested in that. And then I think another moment that I felt that was later in the story within Grand Junction, when Addie is having that big party and Martin Price pulls up, his character's introduced, and he kind of immediately makes problems where Addie's telling him to take his guns, to put his guns away. And he's like, well, don't worry, I'm your protection. I'm not going to take them off. And she's like, take them off. And he's like, I'm not going to take them off. And then he has to kind of get intimidated by Hunter and Rip. I thought maybe conflict was going to happen there, and then it didn't. And I was like, okay, maybe not. Later on in that night, Martin Price starts getting super drunk and is kind of getting hostile with the bartender. I thought for sure something was going to happen, like a big shootout, or at least some kind of conflict was going to occur, and it didn't. He kind of just got thrown out, which was fine, because I understand that was setting up his kind of his resentment and his rage, which eventually led to the barn being set on fire and that mob sort of taking her from the sheriff's custody a lot later. But I think at that point in the story, I was really just waiting for some action to happen. And I was like, oh, when these 2 instances of kind of tension with Martin Price, when both of them didn't lead up to some kind of immediate action, I was left disappointed. I was like, I was waiting for something cool. I was waiting for some heat, but it didn't happen, which was, a little disappointing. I was just kind of waiting for some more stuff to occur. And then there was one very plot-specific thing that I was a little confused about. I remember going into this book, I didn't know anything about it, and I remember wondering if the antagonistic force was going to be fantastical, because I had heard this was a fantasy western, so I was wondering if the antagonists were going to be some kind of monsters or something fantastical, or if it was just going to be kind of corrupt lawmen and outlaws and that kind of thing. So when the book started, she first gets this mark on this guy named Cutter, and then she goes to the mountains to pursue her mark, and Cutter is found dead by shades, kind of these zombie-like dark spirits kind of deal. And they were super cool. I liked them a lot. And that was kind of a big point of why, maybe not why she saw her friend Reverend Ambrose, but he crafts her these shade silver daggers that were supposed to fight off the shades, which made a lot of sense. And then she ends up encountering the shades, and she gets jumped by like 5 of them. And then it's kind of hinted at where Reverend Ambrose is like, well, your necromancy powers are really strong. You're kind of a beacon for these shades. And it really seemed to point to a very supernatural plot, a very fantastical focused plot of these otherworldly enemies being the antagonist force. But then they're never really brought up again. Then it's kind of just focused on McBride and sort of these kind of corrupt lawmen and Martin Price and Polly Torrance at the end of the book. So I was left and then he also at the end of the book sort of they meet up with Miles Lightfellow to form a stronger gang so that they can protect themselves from McBride's men. So I was kind of left wondering like what the shades added. Are they coming back later in the series, and maybe that's why they were kind of sprinkled at the front of the story to plant that within the world, and they'll be touched upon later? Because if not, I'm wondering why they were there in the first place. I'm cool either way. Like, I thought the shades were cool, and especially I thought the way that the whole political corrupt law tie-in with McBride and the sheriff of Grand Junction, I thought all of that was great. I was just kind of wondering where the shades come into play. So, not really a gripe, but I was just left a little confused. And then to get a little bit more specific, for things that I thought were great, the characters. I loved Hunter. Because not only was Hunter a really badass character, and she had some great witty dialogue and was really intimidating, but she had a lot of fear, and she has a lot of emotional scars. And the way that she sort of revives Rip, who was someone that seemed to try to kill her in his past life, and she's like, I'm not going to give you a second of rest, and you're going to basically be servant to me in the afterlife, and was really interesting. And she has a lot of fear, and when she was going to be hung from the tree by Martin Price towards the end of the book, and she was extremely fearful, as anyone would be, you know, I thought the characters in the book were very realistic. And also going back to Rip, I've never really seen necromancy used in such an emotional way, in the way that it makes her fearful. You know, it's strong emotional trauma for her it's not exactly spelled out yet, the exact relation, but it's very implied. Rip was someone that tried to kill Hunter, and Hunter had to kill him. And Hunter's not really a killer. She doesn't enjoy killing. She just hunts down people and brings them in. I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit, but the character work I thought was really great in this book. And the dialogue was great, and I loved all the characters. I definitely want to grab book 2, and I'm very curious to see where things go from here. If you made it to this point in the video, thanks for hanging with me. Before you go, I say this every time, it's routine. We read a book excerpt for the outro, just something cool, something pretty. I don't know, let's see if we can find something nice to read here. Everywhere else was dark, save above them where the stars blazed with a sad, desperate light that seemed to the character like the gaze of a mother watching her child wrestle with a killing fever. Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. Thanks for hanging with me.